And welcome into the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, breaking news edition. You've probably heard the news by now, but Myles Garrett has played his final game as a member of the Cleveland Browns, number 95, traded to the Los Angeles Rams in a deal that was announced a short while ago, but there are all kinds of fingerprints all around this deal that lead us to believe that this has been in the works for a very long time. Mikey McNugget's joining us as we have breaking news coverage on the Myles Garrett trade. Quickly, the trade as we know it now, we get Verse, who is a 25-year-old defensive end.
Very good
He's from Ohio. I didn't know that until just a short while ago. He's a Dayton kid. Defensive AP Player of the Year?
Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year. Two-time Pro Bowler. This is in his first 2 years.
Yep.
I think he's had a total of 12 sacks over the last 2 and 22 tackles for loss. Is he the player Myles Garrett is? No, he's not. Is he a very good, serviceable, younger defensive end with a very high motor? Yes, he is. And if you've watched any Rams games over the last couple of years, this kid jumps off of the screen. I remember there was a game last year that they had played in primetime, and on the show the next day, I raved about how impressed I was with how this kid was in on everything. And that's the kind of player we're getting. Also, what we know now is of at least one first-round draft pick. Adam Schefter of ESPN reporting that there is also significant draft capital to be announced. Whether that's still being negotiated or what, it's likely that's what's the case. What the case is here. Mikey McNuggets, your first reaction to Myles to LA for at least Verse and a 1.
My first reaction was, and we did this an hour and a half ago, Jay, and we said the conversation for trading Myles Garrett is 3 first-rounders. I said maybe 4 first-rounders.
4 was a
You
lot.
said you can't even trade 4. So 4 was beyond even the realistic realms of what this deal could have been. But to just get 1 first-round pick back and Jared Verse feels like they're selling a little low. Now, granted, they know the market better than we do. We are speculating. Myles Garrett's not a young chicken anymore. Still in the prime of his career. No question about that.
I think he's at the peak.
The reigning defensive player of the year. He's won DPOY 2 times in the last 3 seasons. But you get Jared Verse back, who's a young player, but just 1 first-round pick plus a significant draft capital. Now, maybe that turns out to be 3 second-round picks. And if that's the case, Jay, I'll kind of change my opinion on it.
Yeah. You want volume of picks.
But 1 first-round pick back for Myles Garrett feels like selling low on a player who's at the peak of his powers, who's the most dominant, influential defensive player in all of football. But I understand why the Browns had to do this, and I understand moving forward, it changes our entire outlook for this Browns 2026 season upcoming and what their goal is in the 2026 season.
Yeah, I think so. A couple of things. When the Rams make a deal, they make a deal. They go all in, and it's an all-or-nothing deal. Famously, their approach to draft picks is, we don't need them.
So saying that we can't say right now that is less needs.
Yeah, there's an F word involved in there, but them draft picks. They don't need them, okay? They proved that in 2021 when they made a colossal, earth-shattering trade that brought Matthew Stafford to the Los Angeles Rams. And in the process, it was looked at the time as the only way this trade can be looked at as a win is if you win a Super Bowl. Well, that season they won the Super Bowl.
And they did.
And so, look, I mean, you don't want to gift someone a Super Bowl. I'm going to say it right here. I think the Los Angeles Rams are the favorites to win the Super Bowl. Myles Garrett can make that kind of a difference on a football team that has a lot of other pieces. He is a wasted commodity in Cleveland because despite the fact that he's been the most dominant defensive player in the league over the last 3 years, they had 3 wins 2 years ago and 5 wins last year. For him to make his real impact felt, you have to have a quarterback. You have to have an offense. You brought this up on the show today, and I thought it was the most salient point of the day. What difference can a defensive end make? Well, against the New England Patriots, he had 5 sacks, and the Browns lost by 19 points.
Yeah.
So if a quarterback throws for 5 touchdowns, you're winning the game. And as great as it was to have Myles Garrett, he didn't make Cleveland a contender. He played in a couple of playoff games in his time here.
2, right?
3 games. I believe 3 games, right?
3 playoff games, correct.
3 playoff games.
1-2 record.
One of them. That's not the kind of difference you need on an organization like the Cleveland Browns. So I think there is a downgrade. I'm not going to sit here and try to say Jared versus Myles Garrett.
No, Jared Verse is good,
He's
but
not.
There's nobody like Myles Garrett. It's
Garrett's
Myles
one of
Garrett
one.
in a level of his own, and then everybody else.
I'm going to make this prediction too because I think we're going to finally see it. The entire time Myles Garrett was in Cleveland, I kept saying, why isn't he part of the goal line package? When this guy walks off the bus, he's the most impressive specimen in the National Football League, bar none. Why? He's an athlete. We've seen him play basketball. Why isn't he in goal line as a tight end? Why isn't he in goal line as a running back? You watch, mark my words, the Los Angeles Rams will use Myles Garrett on both sides of the football. Not a lot, but in certain situations, he will be in the game and he will make an impact. That's how you get the most out of a guy like that.
Do you know which team threw for the most touchdowns last season under 2 yards?
Let me guess the Rams.
You were correct.
How
You were
difficult. Now imagine Myles Garrett lines up as a tight end in goal line. Who's on him? Your best linebacker? Maybe.
They got Kyron Williams. They could run the ball. You
Good
got
luck.
Devontae Adams.
You got Williams,
Nakua.
and you got a quarterback that can throw the ball. So
Yeah.
now you've got all these options that Cleveland never really did. But for one, I hope we get to see Myles Garrett on offense because I think he could be a real difference maker.
Maybe we'll, maybe we won't. If I'm the Rams, I'm going to be real skeptical putting the defensive star player I just traded and mortgaged my future for on offense, but it would be fun. But back to the Browns real quick, Jakes. I think this is the bigger picture for the Browns. When Myles restructured his contract, and we had these initial discussions,
we knew
could
then.
they trade him? We got a ton of pushback.
We did.
By even some people that we call colleagues and friends on this show.
Yep.
Why are we doing this topic? This is a silly topic. They're not going to trade Myles. They're not going to trade Myles. They're not going to trade Myles. McNuggets is just trying to stir the pot. You don't restructure the contract. And the only benefit being now he could possibly be traded at this time for no reason other than you're at least going to entertain those offers. And I can't wait to find out, and we'll get this information later.
Maybe.
What other teams were interested?
Well,
Mary Kay had reported.
Eagles and the Cowboys.
Those two were in on it as well.
I was
what
hearing
were those
A.J. Brown and picks.
A.J. Brown never made any sense to me.
I didn't want A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is a stat monger too.
But he didn't make sense with the timeline of this team. What this trade tells us, right? The Browns know they're not winning big this year.
I think they have known.
They know that in the next 2-3 years, when Myles Garrett is still in this peak era where he's just an unstoppable force, they're not going to have the offense to match the defense to where you could use Myles to win a championship.
Right.
And now
he was never going to win a championship.
You have an extra draft pick next year, an extra first-round pick next year in a class that is supposed to be loaded at quarterback.
Now, that pick's likely going to be 30, 29,
whatever it
32.
is. It's more ammunition on top of where you're now going to be worse.
Sure.
So no one could argue the Browns are
you
better.
You can package a couple of picks and go way up if you want.
Or you're just naturally going to be worse now. If Myles Garrett helped you win 6 games, maybe now you win 5 games. Instead of having the 11th pick, you now have the 7th pick. The 7th pick plus whatever you have can get you into the top 2, top 3, whatever, to get the quarterback you want. This is a trade that tells you the Browns do not believe in their quarterbacks. The Browns do not believe they're ready to compete this year. And this is a move to build a championship roster in 2-3 years when the dome's open.
That's it.
This is not for 26. This is not for 27. This is all eyes on 2029. When
and
that
Jason's
dome
been
opens,
telling us that for years.
Can we have a franchise with a quarterback, with an offense, with a defense that can complement everything together and lead them to the playoffs? And that's what this trade signals more than anything else.
Mike, this is, you put the cart before the horse here, but you got to turn that pick into a player, number one.
Yeah.
The way the Browns have drafted, really the last 2 years, there's no hay in the barn for this draft, but the last draft that we know something about, the 24 draft, and we talked about this on the show this morning, that class may end up being, and it already looks to be,
all-time great class.
One of the all-time great Cleveland Browns draft classes.
I'll go further than that. I'm going to go
players.
further than that. Not just Browns' great draft classes.
I know.
Historically speaking, the production we saw for them as rookies.
I need more time.
No, I'm just saying, based off the 1 year production from
great.
that class, they're in the historical levels. They still have to do it more and more. I'm not putting them there yet, but they're on the trajectory to get there.
It was a very good draft. I feel comfortable in saying it was one of, if not the best draft classes the Browns have ever had. 7 starters, 7 players drafted. They all started at some point in the season. The 2 quarterbacks you drafted collectively started 13 games. You had a stalwart center of your defensive line that started the entire season and I think played very, very well.
The rookie of the year.
You had the defensive rookie of the year in Schlesinger. I think Judkins would have been a lot better had he not had the injury, but he already flashed that this guy's got the goods. And then Fannin came rolling out like he was born to play that position. So you've got to convert the picks into actual players. But I like where this organization is going. I know the first reaction today in the newsroom when it was announced that he was traded, it was shock and awe, everybody. But when you really start digging down, I'm going to give this trade 1 thumb up. I can't give it 2 yet because I don't know what the other capital is. I did not like, and I said this on the show today, I did not like the fact that he had not uttered a word to Todd Monken.
It was weird.
That's problematic.
It was weird.
I don't care what anyone says.
He was at the Cavs game sitting courtside.
And didn't
couldn't go to
reach
Berea.
out to go to Berea and shake his hand and say, look, I'm not going to be here for these involuntaries, but it's great to meet you. I can't wait to play for you. Something?
What did I text the group chat like 3 minutes before the trade went down?
Oh, very insightful. And by the way, he knew at that time.
He 100% knew.
Todd Monken does not like Myles Garrett, and he cannot hide it.
And 5 minutes later,
Literally
we get the
seconds later, we
get the
hear in the
Schefter
newsroom
report.
he's gone. And I think that there were a lot of things brewing. I think that when Jim Schwartz was not retained, he pretty much had made the decision, I want out. I'm not playing for this organization. I don't blame him, by the way.
No.
He's an all-time great talent.
No one should blame Myles Garrett.
We deserve to see him play January football and maybe February football, and now I think we will. He deserves to play in a Super Bowl. He's one of the all-time great players at his position. And when he's done, you may be able to say with your chest and all confidence, he's the best ever to do it. He's got a lot of miles left. So I think it's a win for him. I think it's a win for the Rams. They immediately are a Super Bowl track team. They already were a very good team. They got better. And I think, and again, we don't know what all the draft capital is, but I want to read some numbers here that I think really drive home how these trades look at the time and what impact they can have. Last year, when the Packers went out and decided they were going to make their earth-shattering move and offer a big deal, a big trade package to
Dallas for Micah
Parsons. The Cowboys the year before were 7-10.
Yep.
And the Packers were 11-6. So the conventional wisdom would be like, well, the Packers probably just went from 11-6 to 12-5 or 13-4, and the Cowboys are probably going to be a 6 or a 5-win team instead of a 7-win team. The Cowboys actually lost 1 fewer game.
They had a tie in there, but yeah.
7-9-1. So their overall winning percentage went up. The Packers, their tie was with the Packers. The Packers were 9-7-1. They lost 2 fewer games. Well, wait a minute. How can that possibly be? You added a Myles Garrett quality defender. How can it be that you went from 11 wins to 9?
Because edge rushers don't impact winning nearly as much as the other positions, which is why since the start of this show, Jay, and honestly, since the start of this show, and I mean not this last 12 minutes, since UCSS, they acquired Deshaun Watson. People had their thoughts on Deshaun. Should they, shouldn't have they? Whatever. The reality, I put my glasses. I can't see what Yak's holding up here.
Toss to Andrew Berry's side. We have some sound. Hold that thought.
Yep.
We have some Andrew Berry sound. He was talking at the golf tournament today, right?
Yes.
And
did not answer questions.
We're out there. We don't like the fact that he didn't take questions. He gave a statement. Here's Andrew Berry now on the trade of Myles Garrett. Listen.
Everybody good? Yep. Okay. All right. Real quick, obviously we wanted today really to be about the Browns Foundation and everything that we're doing, the good work that we're doing there. Not naive that there's a lot in the social media sphere regarding Myles. Nothing is final at this point. We are in discussions of a potential transaction, including him. I'll have a lot more to say about it once it is final, if it does become final. And I'll discuss the details at that point. But we are in negotiations. We're hopeful that we close something here in the next several hours. But nothing's final right yet. So like I said, I'll have an update for you guys maybe as soon as tomorrow when there's resolution. All right.
Andrew, when did the talks really start to pick up?
Again, that's all I have to say. All right.
Did Myles request a trade?
That's all I have to say. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you.
So there you have it. Andrew Berry saying that the deal is not final, but there are multiple reports from people that I would stake my life on.
The deal can't be final till 4 o'clock.
Yes.
So we got 2 hours.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But here's the irony of this. We had talked about it on the show. Could this happen? And I think we were all in the agreement camp. Yeah, it's probably going to happen. There's no reason to renegotiate this contract the way they did unless you're going to trade him.
Yes.
Now, it gave you options, and it made it available for you to trade him. And everybody was killing Andrew Berry well, if they trade him now, he looks like he's a liar. He stood there and said from Cleveland to Canton and all of that stuff. When you're running a team, someone told me once who was a general manager, you know how you can tell when a general manager is lying? How? When his lips are moving.
Yep.
They don't tell us the truth because they lose leverage in any negotiation. So, by all indications, the Rams were trying to work this deal pre-draft.
Yeah.
They wanted to get Myles, and that would have been interesting because perhaps the Browns would have got 2026 draft capital as well.
And the Rams, prior to the trade with the Chiefs, had 2 first-round draft picks
so it
in the
could have been
26
nice.
draft. Could have been those
But
picks.
the Browns were like, no,
Yep.
we're good. And the Browns had insisted they weren't going to trade him. I've been told that the Rams were persistent in calling.
Yep.
We want Myles. We want Myles. We want Myles. They finally broke them down. The irony here is this deal became it's not rubber stamped yet by the Browns because it can't. The league calendar starts at 4:00 today.
p.m.
But we knew that this was happening, and it's literally happens before it's even allowed to happen. That tells you they've been working on this for a while. Andrew Berry saying, and I think this is probably to save themselves any trouble from the league. Well, no, I mean, we're still talking about draft capital. So some of it's announced. Mm-hmm. When they agree on the other pieces, it'll officially be announced by the Rams and the Browns. But the reporters that are reporting that this trade has happened,
it's Schefter. It's Rapoport.
When Schefter says it, it's
and it's Rapoport. It's the two best in the business, both saying
it's happened.
This has happened, and we'll lead tomorrow's UCSS with this. But I'll just keep going back to this. And we still have to find out what the rest of the draft capital is.
Yeah.
2 hours ago, we were talking about the conversation starts with 2 first-rounders and a player.
That's what I thought it should be.
Right? And I don't know how you could add significant draft capital, which is the wording Schefter used in his report, and it wouldn't be just a second first-round pick. Like, this to me screams multiple 2s and some 3s and some 4s in that realm as opposed to another first-rounder.
You don't think there could be another 1 involved? Because I do.
I feel like why would you label it significant draft capital if it wasn't a 1?
Well, again, they can't announce the trade, and if it ends up being another 1, the smoke and mirrors behind it is, wow, they must have been negotiating because they ended up getting a significant piece out of the Rams. Look, you're probably right. It's probably going to be a couple of 2s, maybe a 2 and 2 3s, maybe another player. I don't know. I do know this. I love the trade as it is because, again, he's not going to lead the Browns to a Super Bowl. No. It's entirely possible. The pieces that the Browns get in this trade can help put them closer to a Super Bowl track team than Myles has done in his time here. I love Myles Garrett. I don't want this to come out the wrong way. It probably will. Myles Garrett, to me, was about Myles Garrett. And do I blame him entirely? No, because the Browns continually put him out there with a subpar roster. So I don't blame Myles Garrett for looking around year after year after year saying, where's the cavalry? Mm-hmm. And he said this weekend, some quotes came out from him that said, oh my God, I would love to play in a Super Bowl. I can't even imagine what that would feel like. Now we know that he probably already knew that Philly and San Francisco were the front runners in the deal, and that would give him a significant chance to play in a Super Bowl.
The fact that this deal came together as quickly before the new league calendar flips, the fact
tells
that
us it was in the works.
Well, not just that, but the fact that he refused to talk to Todd Monken. He had been in Cleveland and not gone to Berea, wasn't at any voluntary minicamps.
Not a good sign.
Listen to all of Todd Monken's quotes in the lead up to this. Haven't talked to Myles yet. We haven't met face to face. I don't know who's going to be there. There was never.
How about
Monken
this?
said,
Have you talked to Garrett and he goes, Myles?
Yeah. Well, he said an hour ago.
Like that's disrespectful. What other Garrett do you know?
Garrett Bush. But he said literally an hour ago. He said, I was never assured Myles would be on this team when the season starts. Like, all the breadcrumbs were there, and although it's never, as a fan, it's never easy to swallow the fact that you just traded away the best defensive player in football.
No, it hurts. That's why I said the first reaction was emotional, but when you get past that, and once we have all the information, I think it's okay.
In the long-term building of the team, this makes sense. And as, to me, another thing that screams this to me, Andrew Berry feels really confident in his job security, because you don't trade away that guy you see on the screen right there unless you know you have a job for the next couple of years.
Doesn't it also buy him another year? Because are your expectations now they're going to win more games with Myles? No. So I think the expectation is the organization is saying, without saying, yeah, we're not a contender. We've got some pieces in our bank now, and we're going to try to use that draft capital down the road to build the team of the future. But his 2024 draft,
25
draft, yeah.
His 24 draft was terrible.
The 24 draft was fireable.
Myles
25 draft was great.
Yes.
We don't know about the 26 draft yet, but there's some pieces. There's reason for optimism. Chris Renkel joins us now. Chris, 2 questions to start. Did you think he was going to be traded, and what was your reaction when you heard he was?
Well, I was going to have a nice Monday. I was supposed to be off today.
Yeah,
I was going to get the house. Like, hey, we've been traveling for the NBA playoffs. Get some housework done.
Sure.
And there was just something sitting in my stomach, and I'm just like, something's going to go on today. I don't know what it is.
It's June 1st.
It was the June 1st, and I'll tell you, I know the entire time of this whole Monken, hasn't he met with Myles Garrett, I thought it was a nothing burger. I'm like, it's Myles Garrett doesn't want to go to
here.
Hey.
He's so damn optimistic.
I know.
It's incredible. You Cavs are down 0-3 to the Knicks. I'm telling you, there's a chance.
I never said that. I said they could win one. But no, I was like, oh, it's nothing. It's the summer. He'll come in eventually.
Yeah.
That's just Myles. But then something about today, and then I listened to Todd Monken on the radio when he talked, and I go, okay, something's up, because he didn't say, no, yeah, Myles is going to be here when OTA started.
He already knew that the deal was
He had
done.
to already have
Chris,
known,
what's funny about that is, in our group text, minutes before the trade hit the wire, Mike sends a text, and he said, I'm at the golf tournament. Todd Monken doesn't like Myles, and he cannot hide it. And literally 3 minutes later, on my computer screen, Myles Garrett to L.A. And I'm like,
was that the final straw? You didn't show up to the golf outing, and then they're like, you know what? He doesn't want to come play 18 with me. Then we don't want him on the team.
And I know you say that it was a nothing burger, and a lot of times I would say, let's not put too much stock into that. But when you take everything into account, Jim Schwartz was his guy.
He went to bat for him.
He went to bat and told. Now here's the thing: if you're Jimmy Haslam and you ask Myles Garrett who you want to be the head coach,
better hire his guy.
And you don't hire him,
you
just fractured the relationship for good. And Myles, I had said on the show today, I would hope that Myles would be the bigger person and reach out to his new boss and say, listen, Skip, I know that there was some things said, and I wanted Jim Schwartz, and I publicly stated my endorsement for Jim Schwartz, but he's gone. And this is a business, and I get that. You're our new leader. Where's the flag? We're going to go get it for you. None of that happened. He didn't show up at involuntaries. We knew he was in town because he was going to Cavs games. He couldn't swing by Berea to welcome the new boss. That told me that this relationship was irreparably damaged.
And that, I think, the fact that I was going about it like, oh, hey, it's a nothing, says more about Myles Garrett. The fact that you would think, in a perfect world, if you were the leader, the franchise cornerstone of this team, you should be there on introductory press conference day, sitting front row like it's the first day of school. Todd, I'm Myles. Welcome to the team. Excited to play for you. Let's get this thing turned around. The fact that he didn't, that just kind of shows over the years, as great of a player as Myles Garrett has been. I remember my first voluntary that I covered here at Channel 3 was, I'm like, why is Myles Garrett at least not even showing up to a meeting, just being like, hey, I'm a veteran, I'm not going to show up for this. And I think back to my days in Cincinnati, I'm like, even if Joe Burrow did not want to play in voluntary workouts,
he'd be there.
He'd be there at least. He'd be in the meetings, because that guy wants to win so badly, he will do whatever it takes. And Myles just isn't that guy.
Here's why I'm good with this trade. And I took a lot of heat over the last couple of years for saying this publicly on the show over and over again. I don't care if you lead the league in sacks, and if you even set a sack record, and you're a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. That matters zero to me. The fact that he never wanted to embrace being the leader of this team told me he was just the wrong guy.
I don't think he's going to be a leader in LA now, though.
He's not going to be the leader in LA,
but they have
be.
leader, and that's the difference.
He won't need to be.
They have leaders in that
because there was a void of leadership on this team. Who the hell's the leader going to be? We didn't have anybody. So I know that I kept hearing this. Well, some people just aren't born leaders. Cool, I get it. But when you're the best player on the team, and there's clearly a vacuum of player leadership, step up.
You need somebody.
And take the reins. And the reason I say that, I always would compare him to this guy, because everybody tells me he's that guy. Could you imagine if Ray Lewis didn't bring the leadership tool to the table? What is Ray Lewis? He's a great linebacker. He's Brian Urlacher. But what made Ray Lewis one of the all-time greats was he made it very clear we're not losing today, guys. We're not losing. And that's the kind of leadership you want from your best player. He was never that guy here. And he will not be that guy in LA, and he won't need to be.
He doesn't need to be, yeah.
But for me, I just felt like when he publicly stated it was my goal to win Defensive Player of the Year. This was 3 years ago. When he said those words, I said, oh, he's finally said the quiet part out loud. Of course that's why he's playing. And that's fine. But I've always been told from great players, the personal stuff will come. At the end of the day, when you're judged for a career, it's what did you do? What was what impact did you have on the team? He was the greatest player at his position the last 2 years, and we had a total of 8 wins over 34 games. Not good enough.
I don't want to diminish like how good Myles was because he's spectacular.
I don't either.
Hall of Famer.
But the
all
impact
the leaders,
he had on the team was below what it should have been.
But that's just the position. That has nothing to do with Myles. And I wish he was at voluntary minicamps. I wish he showed up to OTAs. My preference is every player, regardless of position. Joe Bitonio skipped last year. Like I wish those guys were there, especially with the new head coach. But I'm not going to let us sit here and diminish how good Myles Garrett was for his career with the Browns. I like the deal for Cleveland. I think they're building for the future. They need a quarterback, right? This tells me they don't trust their quarterback room. They now have more ammunition to go up and get said quarterback next year or the year after to put themselves in a position to have that franchise quarterback when the dome opens in 2029. I have nothing against this move from Andrew Barrett. I understand why they did it. I don't personally like trading Myles Garrett, but I understand it all. But we can't sit here and pretend that Myles Garrett wasn't the single best defensive player in football the last couple of years, even if he doesn't have the wins.
No, but I'm going to challenge you on one thing that you said. Well, he plays that position. You know, that doesn't. It's not a changing position. I've said at the time when it happened, and I'll say it again. The reason the Rams won the Super Bowl after the Matthew Stafford trade was Aaron Donald.
I can tell you the moment it happened.
You covered the Bengals.
Yeah.
He made 2 game-saving plays in the final 4 that he's probably the only player in the league that can make those plays, and he made them out of a combination of talent, grit, will. That's the impact that a defensive player can have.
I'm not disagreeing, but also there was a 4th and 13 against the Buccaneers that Matthew Stafford threw a deep go ball to Cooper Kupp that like 3 quarterbacks in the world can make, and they don't even get to the Super Bowl without the quarterback making that throw.
And the guy that got them over the hump, and Matthew Stafford had a great game. But anybody that watched that game will tell you that the Rams don't win that game if Aaron Donald doesn't make the 2 plays that he made in the Final 4.
It boils down to the nature of the NFL and the nature of football. It is not a one-person kind of game.
Not.
You're going to have different guys step up in different moments, but you overall have to have enough guys to make those plays. And the fact of the matter is the Browns do not. Do I like the idea of trading away a franchise cornerstone, a guy who's going to get his name up in the stadium, in the dome when it's all said and done and go to the Hall of Fame with the Browns next to his name? No, you don't want to make other contenders better when you're trying to become a contender. But this does allow you now to bring in more guys who might be able to fill in some of those gaps. And most importantly, the guy they got is younger, he's cheaper, so the salary cap goes down. And this extends their window because I think it's all about that dome. You want to have this team together and a playoff contender when they take the first.
They're going to have to sell tickets that are going to be more expensive. Yak, because we're on and we're not monitoring social media, if you see anything, can you let us know? I'm sure you would, but there is more coming. We had debated this on the show this morning, like what would it take to pry Myles Garrett away? I think the general consensus ended up being 2 firsts.
2 firsts.
Mike actually said, I'd want 4. No players ever.
I just wanted that. Threw it out there, yeah.
Look, he's a great player, but the impact that he's had on his current team is negligible.
And the fact that he's 31 years old now.
Yeah.
He's 30, right?
He turns 31 during this upcoming season.
Yeah,
there you go.
And it's really hard to project a player's peak. They get old fast. But a guy like him that looks like he was chiseled out of granite, I would think that his longevity in the league would be extended because of his physical condition. He's a specimen. He's
1-of-1.
So, but he's at the age where you start to think about where does the decline happen? And is the decline this year? I don't know. It could be. I know in verse we got a player that's still going the right direction. So he's a Dayton guy. Did you know much about him at all? I didn't know he was from Dayton.
No, I did not.
Yeah, he's a Dayton
so
guy.
I mean,
he's a little older. So as a rookie,
well, he's 25.
26, I think.
He's going to be
he
was a
25.
long. Well, I think he turns 26 this season. I think 25.
Okay.
I'm jumping
26.
the gun on both of them.
Well, it depends on do you call him
Don't guess my age, man.
Well, it's like, do you call him what age for what season? Like, or
Well,
is he
I was
currently?
I always speak in current
But he was a
terms.
little older as a draft prospect coming out.
Yes,
Won
yeah.
Rookie of the Year in his first year. He's like, we talk about the draft capital the Browns got back. Jared Verse is a now foundational piece of this Browns defense.
couldn't
And
agree
that
more.
shouldn't be overstated. And he
No, I agree.
plays with a motor that I think Browns fans are going to love. The one thing
gonna
about
love
him
him.
coming out of Florida State was relentless.
Yep.
Never takes plays off. He's really good against
And
the
I
run,
felt
too.
that, and I don't know if you guys can agree or disagree, I felt if it wasn't an obvious passing down in a sack situation,
Miles took the play.
Miles was taking plays off. And that's okay, I get it. But when I watch Verse, I'm like, this guy doesn't stop.
Miles absolutely towards the end of the year. You cannot convince me otherwise. Was sack hunting.
Like the Tennessee game.
Oh,
when he
he
was
was
lining
sack
up
hunting.
The last
7
five
yards.
games
flying
of the
up
season,
way
he
out,
was sack
and
hunting.
if you're an opposing offensive coordinator, you see their best defensive player way out there. You can scheme
That's
against
how
that. You
Tennessee
know,
ran for
yeah.
160
It
yards
cost us,
against them.
it cost
Exactly.
us a win against a team that at the time I don't think had a win.
No, Tennessee had
I thought we were their first win.
no, I think
Tennessee.
that was
I
their
can't
second.
remember.
They won a game earlier than they went on that big losing streak.
Okay. And then I
But
misremembered.
either way.
I thought they hadn't won, and they won the game clearly because they said, oh, their best player is looking for sacks, so we're just going to run
Yeah.
right by him on his way to the quarterback. And fine, I get it. He's playing for a crappy team. He's trying to
He was playing for
gather
the record,
stats.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
There's nothing
I
wrong
really
with
don't think there's anything wrong
But
with
to
that.
the point
but
is, if you're a Browns team that doesn't have that kind of leadership and that foundation, you need guys who aren't playing for records. They're playing for the team. Even if they have 3 wins, you want to set that foundation. And this goes into, again, I don't want it to be crossed. I don't like the habit of trading away really good players. That's not how you get better. But getting a guy who fits your culture better and fits what you're trying to build more, I think in the long run, that might benefit you in the long run.
And fits your timeline.
And fits the
I
timeline,
can't
that's the other
emphasize that enough. Like,
Yeah.
as good as Miles is right now, and once again, I want to re-emphasize this. I'll look right into the camera. He is the single best defensive player in football. There is no one who's close. It is Myles Garrett, and it is everybody else.
I agree.
His timeline right now at 30, turning 31 this season, does not line up with the fact that they are arguably the youngest team in football. They had 7 rookies start last year. We are high on the 2026 draft class. And when those guys get into their peak of their career, when this next crop of the Cleveland Browns enters their peak, and whoever that is at quarterback, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, someone who's not currently on the roster, Arch Manning, Lenore Sellers, Dante Moore, if it's someone in this 2027 draft, when those guys are at their peak, Miles is going to be 34, 35, 36. Is it going to be the same Miles now that it will be in a couple of years? This trade puts the Browns on one singular timeline, 2029. That is it. No questions asked. And I wouldn't be surprised, real quick, we saw Miles get traded. Would it shock you if Denzel Ward's next up in the next
That's what I
couple
was
of
gonna
days?
Not at
ask,
all.
is this the
Not
end?
at all. If you're in the now, that's the full flip switch to rebuild mode.
Schefter just tweeted something. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm reading the Schefter tweet.
Adam Schefter.
Adam Schefter, the Rams' interest was sparked shortly after they modified the contract of Myles
Sure,
Garrett.
because that
It's been in the
that
works.
opened the window.
Been in the works since March.
Yep.
This is now happening, but this is not something that shouldn't have been expected since they
Yeah.
opened the window when they renegotiated his contract, which goes back to where we started this, Chris.
Yeah.
You only do that
If you're going to
if
trade
you're
him.
going to trade him.
And
they traded him.
writing
it gives
was
you
on the wall.
options, and the fact that they did it flew in the face of the conventional wisdom that Andrew Berry spoke of when they initially signed him. Remember when he was asked to be traded from Cleveland to Canton, all of that stuff. You don't make that adjustment to the contract unless you're willing to trade him.
Yeah.
So it didn't necessarily mean that, yep, we're absolutely going to trade him. What it said to the other teams was,
We're listening.
We're listening. If you've got a good enough offer, we'll take you up on that, and we're willing to go that far. And that's what happened.
I want to read the offer that was just handed to me, apparently. This is the updated what the Browns are getting. Rams are getting Myles Garrett. Browns get Jared Verse, as we said, 2027 first-round pick, a 28 second-round pick, and a 29 third-round pick.
So that's what I thought. I said either 2 seconds or maybe a second and a third.
It feels way too little for Myles Garrett.
I know
It
that
feels,
it feels
unless
way
you
too little
say
for Myles
Verse
Garrett.
is essentially a first-round pick, so you get
Well,
two
it's still,
firsts.
I wanted 2 firsts and a player.
That's fair,
A
yeah.
player, a first, a second, and a third.
But-
and the 2027 first, the Rams are now the Super Bowl favorites. Does that mean they're going to win the Super Bowl?
No.
Absolutely not, but that's a
You're
pick.
likely going to be picking
28, 29,
down.
30, 31,
And they
32.
have an aging quarterback who is one. I mean, if Stafford goes down, not that we're wishing injuries on anybody, but Stafford goes down, Is Ty Simpson going to lead this team
Yeah,
to a
no.
Super Bowl? Probably
No.
not.
And
But that's what I wanted to pick later. If you're going to get a first round them, I'd rather a 28, 29 first than a 27 first.
But I'll say this: don't get too hung up on the numbers, the first, second, and the third. What it is it's bundle.
capital. It's ammunition.
It's a bundle of packaging that you can use now to where. And I'm not saying that this is the beginning of the Manning sweepstakes. That's not what I'm saying. But hear me out all the way through this.
Gives you flexibility.
We know the ties between the Haslams and the Manning family. They're deep. Mm-hmm. We know that Jimmy Haslam would love more than anything to have Arch Manning as your quarterback.
Yep.
I get all of that. If you surprise folks and win 5, 6, 7 games this year, you're not winning the Manning sweepstakes with your pick. But if you have in your back pocket a first, second, and third from the Rams, you can bundle all three of those and perhaps move all the way up and get Arch Manning. So it positions them. Now, imagine if you're selling tickets to the Dome in 29 and you can say, there's this family out there that has put 3 quarterbacks in the NFL, and they're all really, really good. Mm-hmm. And we've got a chance now to get the 4th Manning in the NFL. Come buy season ticket packages in our new beautiful Dome Stadium. It does sort of line up. Now, the bad part of that is, and you brought up Denzel, and you're absolutely right to do so, if you've made the decision that Myles Garrett is expendable, then who is not? He's the best player on your football team.
Zero.
So if you move Denzel Ward, and Denzel would not get nearly the haul that Myles Garrett got.
No.
He's not only he's in the concussion.
He's not getting a first.
No, but you could get pieces for Denzel Ward, and I'm not advocating that they trade him, but they could get pieces if this is where they're going, and then you might as well put the sign up on the stadium that we're under construction. We're rebuilding. There's nothing to see here. See you in 2029.
It's under construction, the Dome, and the team.
No, it's true.
My question when it comes to Denzel, because obviously that's where your first thought is, like, all right, who's next? Denzel, obviously the concussion issues, he's getting up there. Corners fall off so much quicker than any other position. Not that Denzel has fallen off. He's still really good. But if Sauce Gardner went for a 1, and Sauce is one of the best corners, and that really
did he go for 2 ones?
I think he might have.
Because he went for 2
1s.
2 1s.
The Jets
I feel it was 2.
The Jets have 3 first-round picks in next year's
That's right, they do.
I know they do.
But Denzel clearly wants to be here. On the opposite of what Myles Garrett didn't show up for anything.
Yeah.
Denzel's been here. Even if he's not participating in OTAs, he said, hey,
he's a hometown kid.
I've met with the coaching staff. I got the playbook. I'm all in. He was at the Dome opening. He's been the spokesperson for the guys. And I wonder how much of this trade for Myles was team-driven and how much of it was Myles-driven. Did Myles learn from his public, get me out of here, scorched earth
debacle,
and didn't look good when he signed that deal? Everyone goes, oh, you're just in for the money. Did he quietly make a trade request, or was it promised to him, hey, we're going to give you 1 more year.
I'd like
we'll
to
look
know.
at this next year.
I hope we find out.
That's the unknown that we don't know.
I get the sense, and I have no inside knowledge on this whatsoever. When he went on that tirade last year, Radio Row rampage, trade me, burn everything to the ground.
Bad look.
And then they gave
Really
him that
bad.
giant contract extension, and I can't get this one quote out of my head. After he signed that extension, Myles was on with Andrew Siciliano, and Andrew Siciliano asked him, hey, did the Browns tell you they're playing at quarterback? And he goes, mm-hmm. And he goes, do you like it? And he goes, mm-hmm. And the Browns' plan was Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, and 2 rookies.
Yeah.
They drafted in the 3rd and the 5th round.
And Flacco was gone, and Pickett was
And
gone. 3 weeks into the season, and
once he signed that contract extension, because he said he wanted to win a Super Bowl. That was the reason he wanted to be traded. He didn't think the Browns were in a position. And their plan to make Myles Garrett happy at the quarterback position was Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, who maybe 57, maybe 59, maybe 130. We don't know. Because age is not.
Depends who you ask.
Age is clearly not the strength of this.
don't
group,
forget Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders,
who had never played a snap in the NFL.
Yeah.
To me, Myles like, all right, I still got to get out of here at some point.
Myles said, "That's your plan. That's not a plan."
Because
How can
he
you
knows.
not get excited by that,
But he knows.
I'm giddy thinking about it.
We do sports talk for a living, whether it's fair or not. Ring culture's a thing, and when Myles Garrett retires, whenever that may be, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever.
He better have one.
To be in the conversation with the Lawrence Taylors and the greatest pass rushers ever, he needs something on this finger. On his ring finger, he needs at least 1 Super Bowl ring, and he saw the writing on the wall. It was not going to happen on this current iteration of the Cleveland Browns. He needed to get out. I don't think the trade talks ever stopped. I think they entertained them before the draft. I think they entertained them up until the final deal was accepted with the Rams. And I'm just going to say I'm not surprised that this happened. I know a lot of fans were surprised. I'm not surprised in the slightest.
The Rams, according to reports, were very hesitant to include Verse in the trade.
He's really good.
They were throwing other names out, and the Browns, I think, finally just drew the line in the sand and said, look, no deal happens without Verse, which was smart for Cleveland because you're getting back a player that plays the position that you're leaving a massive hole.
And at this point in the offseason, who would you get
Where are you going to fill that?
Yeah.
Where are you going to fill that?
Jadavian Clowney. I like Jared Verse a lot more than those two options.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, they're long in the tooth, and Verse is a young, up-and-coming player with an incredibly high motor. Now, if you ask Jared Verse right now, how you feeling, he's probably like, oh, my God, I may be the only loser in this trade.
No, because it's a homecoming for him. He's a Dayton kid.
Dayton and Cincinnati, or Dayton and Cleveland, rather, there's miles of difference between them.
I will say there's
Dayton
a
is
surprising
aligned with
amount of
Cincinnati.
Cleveland fans in Dayton.
Yeah, but
surprising number.
there's-
It's more Cincinnati.
Look, if
but
you
there's
go
a
into
surprising
Kentucky,
number.
it's loaded with Browns fans from the old Jim Brown days,
Right.
and their dads taught their sons to root for this team,
Yeah.
and on and on. But Dayton is far more closely affiliated with Cincinnati than with Cleveland.
Yes, they are.
So if it was a trade to the Bengals, and they've got your quarterback now is Joe Burrow, you're like, yeah, I'm going home, and I've got a team that can win a Super Bowl.
But
He's
Cleveland's a lot closer to Dayton than Los Angeles.
Of course it is, but look at the
I'll have to check
situation.
my
No, I
map.
know.
My Westlake
I'm just
education
saying,
right
like he's an Ohio kid. Ohio's
Yeah,
Ohio.
again, it's nice to say, but Dayton's a lot closer to Kentucky than it is to Cleveland.
He is a loser in this situation.
He's
That
probably
is
thinking
true.
that right now. Like, let him come in, meet the guys. Maybe he'll get excited about all this. I hope he does.
And I'm sure the front office might give him several $1 million to get excited to be here.
An extension's coming. Like,
Yeah, no, right.
He's about to
gonna
get paid.
and he should. I mean, he's had a great start to his NFL career. I think he's a guy that can make a difference and will make a difference. And for Myles, I think this Myles is already on the Hall of Fame track. We know that. But this gives Myles a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl in this iteration of the Rams. Now, somebody had mentioned an injury at quarterback. Well, I mean, at this point, if you're Polymarket, you're probably setting better odds that he does get hurt than he doesn't, because he's at that age where a major injury is lurking around every corner. And if that were to happen, and I don't wish that on anybody, but if that were to happen, Myles all of a sudden would be like, "Oh my God, I'm cursed. I can't get a break here."
Let's talk about the Andrew Berry part of all of this. And excuse me if you guys already have. I was driving in here.
we want your
ran his
opinion.
comment.
So, but Andrew Berry now, when you look at his resume, whenever his day comes that he's done with the GM of the Browns, the Deshaun Watson trade,
Yeah.
the Myles Garrett trade,
Yeah.
walked into a Browns team with Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, all those guys.
Who, by the way, sided with the Giants.
Giants with the Giants. I can't think of a GM with more pressure. He might have some job security, but now he has to get this right or he will never work in football.
I'm not sure if a general manager has ever needed to hit draft picks more than Andrew Berry. We heard Jimmy Haslam said the only reason he didn't fire him with Kevin Stefanski was the success of the 2025 class. We all really like on paper what happened in 2026. You just trade away Myles Garrett for an extra 2027 first, a 2028 second, and 2029 third. Jay Glazer just tweeted out that part of the reason the Rams selected Ty Simpson at 13, which everyone had as a reach, was they knew they weren't going to have a first-round pick later in 2027 next year.
They were ready
because
to deal it.
this deal has been in the works for a long time. That's from Jay Glazer of Fox
Well, we heard
Sports.
it was before the draft that we're talking about
so,
it.
Which now makes a lot more sense when all things align. He's got to make sure this 2026 class produces as much as we like the names on paper. And this 2027 draft, with as loaded as is, not just at quarterback.
Yeah, no, it's a good draft.
You got Jeremiah Smith.
It's a good draft.
You got Cam Coleman. You got Ryan Wingo at receiver. You got Dylan Stewart from South Carolina and Colin Simmons at edge. You got a couple stalwart left tackle, potential franchise left tackles in this draft. Whether they go quarterback, whether they go else, they're now at 2 bites at the apple if they don't consolidate and trade them into one. You got to hit, and you got to turn Myles Garrett into something. Last point on this.
Yeah.
When the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson, the Texans got those 3 first-round picks.
Yeah.
None of the guys the Texans drafted with those 3 first-round picks turned into real stalwarts. Kenyon Green got traded to Philly. Forget they took the first year, and they used the other pick to trade up and get Will Anderson as part of a multi-pick.
And
Will
he's
Anderson,
been
obviously,
a huge
Yeah,
success.
he's been good.
Their pick was at 12 from the Browns. They
Right.
needed 12 plus
but they
a future
used that
to get
capital
up. Yeah.
with other capital to move up and get a stalwart.
I mean, he's one of the best pass rushers in football. Andrew Berry has to hit these picks to make this feel
I
a
agree
lot
with
better.
that. The pressure that he's under. I remember when Jerry Jones took over the Cowboys. after the first season, he fired Tom Landry. And then he fired Jimmy Johnson. And then he fired Barry Switzer. And I thought, for all of his impact and his Super Bowls that he won in a very short window, the first paragraph of his obituary is still going to include that he fired Tom Landry, who was the old GOAT, Jimmy Johnson, who had won Super Bowls and national championships, and Barry Switzer. And what has he done since? It's been an absolute colossal fail. And for Andrew Berry, it would be that, and this isn't fair, but Nick Chubb's legacy here was as unproductive as it could have been. And he's a Hall of Fame player. And I've said this, and this isn't all on Andrew Berry. This is on the Browns. The Browns have the incredible distinction of having Joe Thomas for his entire career, Nick Chubb for basically the bulk of his meaningful career, and Myles Garrett for all of his career to date.
And Bitonio.
And they've got nothing, and Joel Bitonio, but these three guys are Hall of Fame guys that you're going to say, oh, wow, you guys had these three Hall of Famers? They were on the team at the same time? How many bowls did you win? Nothing.
How about playoff wins?
None.
One.
Joe Thomas.
Well,
Joe Thomas
didn't
win a playoff
But
game.
Thomas didn't overlap with Chubb and Myles, did he?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
I think he did for a
Joe
year.
Thomas
year?
was
Yeah,
on the
for 1
roster
year.
with Nick Chubb and with Myles Garrett. And to me, and I don't want to put it all on
Chubb,
Andrew Berry,
just
but
Myles.
No, I think Chubb's first year, Joe Thomas was still on the team.
Chubb was drafted the same year as Baker, and Joe never blocked for
Was that
Baker.
his last year, the year before?
The year before
Yeah, so
was
he had
his
the
last
1 year with
Okay.
Myles. And,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
So there was never a season where there wasn't Joe Thomas, Myles Garrett, or Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
And for some of those, there was overlap with Thomas and Garrett. And Myles and Chubb
played together.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, it's a glaring indictment of a team that was given a lot of good pieces that could just build absolutely nothing around it. And that's why the fan base has been scratching our heads for the last 2 decades. Like, how can we be collectively this bad when we've been gifted 3 Hall of Famers in that stretch, and you've got nothing to show for it? Absolutely nothing.
It's hard to fathom.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a lot of talent,
it's hard to fathom for other people, but for us, it's like, oh yeah, that's
But
the
it goes
Browns.
back. You named those three players, right? And I'm going to throw Bitonio in here for the sake of this. I know he's not on that level. You have a left tackle, you have an edge rusher, you have a running back, and you have a left guard.
Those are the pieces. Well, the big one that's missing is a wide receiver.
What you don't have is...
No, you don't have the quarterback.
No,
That's
of course.
what-
No, that's what's missing. All these conversations, and I will scream this from the mountaintop. People get mad at me every time I say it. If you do not have a quarterback, you do not have a chance to win consistently.
Yeah, no,
You'll have the one-offs, but consistently speaking, you will never be able to compete at the highest level.
You have the
without
Trent
that
Dilfers
guy.
every once in a while, but you need
Yes.
Ray Lewis on the other side to pick up for
Yes.
Trent Dilfer.
And is
Or
he
You
need
need
a
an
Jamal
all-time great
Lewis. Yeah, you need
somewhere
an
in the
all-time
mix.
great.
Yes.
And it's just frustrating over time to watch the Browns have this kind of individual talent but never be able to collectively put it together for any meaningful kind of season over the last 20 years. I don't know that the quarterback's on the roster. I don't think he is. And I think the Browns are saying to us,
No, by trading Myles
we
Garrett,
don't think he is
by trading
either.
him, they're saying we don't believe it.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
Or
they're
they-
hedging
they-
their bets. Because now, if one of these guys, if Deshaun goes out there and balls out, if Shedeur balls out, if Dylan Gabriel balls out, then you go into next year's draft, you don't need to package picks to go up and get a quarterback. You're like, we have our guy. Now we have two
picks.
first-round picks in a loaded draft. We can go find a Year Myles Smith. We can go find somebody at the left
Sure.
side of the line. You can, I mean, they're hedging their bets here. I agree with you guys. I don't think the quarterback's on the roster. But if we're proven wrong, the Browns are in a better spot than
And if
we
they
ever
do,
thought.
right? Let's say it is. We'll use Shedeur first. Let's just say it's Shedeur, right?
Yeah.
He balls out. You now have 2 first-round picks. Wherever it comes down to, you don't need a quarterback. You can trade up for Year Myles Smith.
And you got a quarterback on a rookie deal.
On a rookie deal.
Very inexpensive
A
rookie deal.
fifth-round rookie deal.
You
Yes,
can try
I mean,
and
you couldn't ask for anything better.
You could try and trade up for Colin Simmons or Dylan Stewart. 2 guys that
Good.
are both, by the way,
Sure.
as prospects, are in the same tier right now that Myles Garrett was entering his junior year at A&M. Like, that's how highly regarded these 2 edge rushers are. You have Jordan Seaton, the left tackle at LSU, transferred from Colorado, who was the number 1 overall high school kid coming in, has had a good season, or 2 good career seasons at Colorado, transferred to LSU, Lane Kiffin's offense. You have other positions that now you can get in on. Teams that don't need quarterbacks, meaning they're going to fall down. So Year Myles Smith, despite being probably the most talented player in the class, he's not going 1 next year. Probably not going
No,
top.
probably not.
Probably
No.
not going top 3 because there's at least 3 quarterbacks that teams feel so highly about. You know what's pretty easy to get up to? Or not pretty easy, but
You can get up to 4 with a
With-
first, a second, a third over the next 3 years.
you have the ammo to get up to that
What?
as opposed to getting up into the number 1 spot to draft a
Were
quarterback.
those years stipulated? Was it a 28 second?
27 first, 28 second, 29 third.
Is that official, or is that what Schefter's reporting?
That's what Schefter's reporting.
Okay, the odds are then that's it, and that's
Yeah.
probably going to be it. You get 3 picks within the first 3 rounds, that's a deal. All right, that's going to come to bring to an end our breaking
hour.
news coverage of Myles Garrett leaving the Cleveland Browns for Jared Verse, a first, a second, and a third. Much more talk tomorrow on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.